Good morning, everyone. I can already tell it's the second day of conference because it's quieter. Like brains are full, bodies are tired, and yet you're all still here, top of the morning. Thank you for being here. Whatever it took out there in your world, internally in your world, thank you for making the space and time to join us today. It always feels good that the work we collectively do is of value to everyone, that it will go through what we need to go through to be together. So I appreciate that, and Oak staff and board appreciate that. We also appreciate the Kentucky State University staff and crew, the farm, the media team. I mean, look at the parking lots, look at this beautiful building. Check out the slides and audio video that don't always go as planned, any of that, and yet this team really comes through. So a round of applause for our host, please. And in the farming world, that's certainly something we can relate to. So thanks for the patience and grace that everyone is showing in that. Speaking of plans that don't always go as we set them, we do have some agenda changes. So I will go through the ones that we know, and hopefully that will settle things in for the day. At 10:30, we have a Farming with Families panel, and we've done some quick work with some amazing people to put that together, long work to put it together and quick work to make some adjustments. Madeline Bella and Davita Flowers are unfortunately not able to join us for that. Both of them live in South Central Kentucky, and because of weather impacts, were not able to be here today. However, we have invited Paul Dingle and Maggie Wilder to join that panel, and they've both graciously accepted this morning, y'all. So props to those awesome farmers. So that panel will be a complete panel, and I encourage you to join that conversation if it fits your choice of three. We also have Megan Pillsbury for the afternoon stretch break, who was not able to join us yesterday or today, and we're working to find someone for that. We're grateful for Jamie Rice for leading those early morning sessions. We'll get some stretching in some way. At 10:30 also, Michelle and Amy could not join us for the value-added processing of chestnuts and acorns. This is sad, and I know I've heard that it's a popular session for a lot of people. We're going to work with them to deliver that content sometime within the next year-ish, be it at the next conference or a webinar or something. They're great partners. They have great content to share. We'll get it out there. However, we did plan an alternate session, and Dana from Johnny Selected Seeds is going to offer variety selection for Kentucky farms at that 10:30 spot instead of the chestnuts and acorns session. And if you go to page 15 in your program, there's a QR code where the description of that is on the website. It is also on the agenda board outside of the correct room. I think it's that one, but the description is small, but it's there, so you can make your choice. Page 15 QR code. Also on that same QR code tagged website, Joel DeFore will be speaking on the agenda because Lauren Kallmeyer is unfortunately unable to be here because of the weather. Her session, Considerations for Value-Added Herbal Products, will not happen at 2:30. Joel DeFore from Earth Tools will offer the right tool for the job, proper selection, use, and care of handheld gardening tools. Both of those are on that website, page 15 QR code, and on the signs outside the proper rooms. Thank you again to Dana, Joel, Maggie, Paul, whoever does stretch break, and all of you for your help and understanding. Pausing to breathe. So, we have an opening session this morning. Oh, there was one thing. I knew there was one more. Today is a day when you can find the entire Oak staff minus Jackson, in the building. And so we don't have an office you can come to, right? We all work from home. You have to communicate with us by phone, by email, by Zoom. Today's the day to find that Oak staff member whose program you're interested in and talk to them about it. So there you go, there's that. If you don't know what programs I'm talking about, find any staff member, board member, registration desk, or the early pages of your program, dig into it, or talk to your neighbor. They might have some experience with it. These photos over here, and the ones that are hanging in the halls to the hallway to the bathrooms and the lunch line, are courtesy of Erica Chambers, who is a photographer, an entrepreneur, a creator from Berea, or who lives in Berea currently. And Erica came to us and said, for International Year of the Woman Farmer, and because of my roots in farming family in East Kentucky and seeing all of these women farmers around me and in our communities, I'm creating this photo exhibit. Maybe we could partner, since you're offering an opening session that is a woman farmer panel for International Year of the Woman Farmer. And voila, Erica made it happen. We're grateful to that. We're grateful to be the opening public exhibit for that photo display. If you start looking at these photos and the ones in the hallway, you'll see some of those amazing women farmers who are currently present with us and speaking and in the hallways with you and out there doing the good work. So we're happy to recognize that and happy to partner with Erica and Dirt Pearls. Check out their social media for that. Oak is a welcoming community. It's been that way since 15 plus years ago, when the initial group got together, farmers and allies and ag professionals, to support each other and to grow that forward. And each person in that group and in this group are unique and contribute to the shared wellness of our communities. And we're so grateful to do the work with you. In this community, the uniqueness and the differences are everywhere, right? We've got no-till farmers and those who are digging in deep with the metal. We've got private landowners and those who are stewarding shared, common, leased, and public lands. We have black farmers whose families work the same soil as enslaved peoples, and families who staked claim to a land many generations ago, stewarded for eons by indigenous peoples. We have organic farmers and those who farm organically and those who don't. We have those who call it biodynamics or permaculture or regenerative. And we're all represented here. And there are those who are not here with us who Oak also works with and who are part of our work. Farm workers who return to their families in distant lands while working seasonally to feed Kentucky and America throughout seasons. And all of those people we hope to include the voices of. None of them, none of us, are only that one label or any of those one isolated, socially constructed beings. We are all multidimensional and we're all connected. And we are happy to bring to you today the voices of some of the women farmers in that as part of the International Year of the Woman Farmer from the United Nations and all over the world, happening in 2026. So I'm going to invite the farmers who are interested, who are part of that panel, to the stage as we share with you the Slido You're sitting in alphabetical order by last name in case the slide doesn't get to you that quickly. But we're going to use Slido as we move through their conversation and into the question and answer. The QR code is up here, and you can find the Woman Farmer panel, hopefully directly in that QR code. You can type in your questions, and then once you see questions being added by others and your own, you can upvote them or downvote them based on your preference for what you want these panelists to speak to today. So this Woman Farmer panel have their own unique voices, their own multidimensional identities, and will share some of their stories with you. And we are grateful to researchers like those at Penn State and the University of Madison, Wisconsin-Madison, who in 2024 published quantitative data showing that having more women in agriculture is associated with greater community well-being. Their research is the first to put the numbers to this link, that women farmers approach their operations in ways that positively impact their communities. And the data reveals that U.S. counties with a higher share of farms owned or operated by women have higher rates of non-farm entrepreneurship, longer life expectancies, and lower poverty rates. That research and the American Farmland Trust report that they pulled together in 2021 to 2023 called The State of Gender Equity in U.S. Agriculture, bringing conversations and interviews with thousands of women farmers, ranchers, and other women in agriculture together, are a little of what this panel used to talk about and inform the conversation, as well as the deep-lived stories of all of the people you see on the stage in front of you. So I'll let them introduce themselves. I'm grateful to Ray Strobel of Barr Farms for being the moderator and woman farmer to lead this. Ray has done a lot of excellent work in organic farming in the state, as well as excellent work in elevating women throughout the state for many years. And so I'll hand the mic over to Ray at this time. Welcome them, please.
Thank you all so much. Thank you for being here for this really important panel. My name is Ray Strobel. I'm super excited to be here with these truly inspirational women. I'm co-owner of Barr Farms, farmer there. I also, in my off-farm job, work at the Kentucky Foundation for Women that supports feminist art for social change in Kentucky. And so Erica Chambers' beautiful photographs was partially funded through a grant by the Kentucky Foundation for Women. So there's probably artists in here as well as farmers. So if you're interested in that, this is a beautiful example of feminist art for social change. I mean, just spend some time with these photographs, really let them into your heart. So thank you for this exhibit as part of this panel. Let's see, so the panelists wanted me to introduce them to give a brief bio, so I'm gonna do my best to be quick on that because I really just want them to talk because they're amazing. So Hannah Breckbill farms in Decorah, Iowa at Humble Hands Harvest, a worker-owned cooperative farm. She and her farm partner grow about 2 acres of organic vegetables and seeds, grass-finished sheep, and fruit and nut trees. She hosts a queer farmer convergence at their farm, and she believes in the culture we can build by celebrating the land and building local community. Fatima Jackson has an 80-acre meat goat operation in Salvisa, Kentucky, with her husband, Justin. They currently own and manage about 100 meat goats using sustainable practices and good genetics. Raising quality food is one of the things that brought her to farming, along with raising their 2 young children on the farm. Emily Oakley co-owns and operates Three Springs Farm, a diversified, certified organic vegetable farm in eastern Oklahoma. She and her partner Mike farm on 3 acres for a 350-member CSA program. Their goal is to maintain a 2-person operation that demonstrates the viability of small-scale farming. And finally, Robin Verson of Hill and Hollow Farm and Oak has spent the past 3 decades developing and managing her certified organic farm in Metcalfe County, Kentucky, and raising 3 incredible humans, and they are incredible. She raises vegetables, herbs, cut flowers, dye plants, and heritage breed sheep, rotationally grazing the pastures. So, yay, you all are great. All right, so I wanted to start with a quote that's pretty full here. So this is from the report of the American Farmland Trust that Jenny mentioned. And if you're interested in this topic at all, I highly suggest reading that report. I at first was like, what are we gonna talk about? Do we need this panel? And then I started reading the report and I was like, this is just so rich. So so in this report, there's quotes that are pulled from different people and network leaders. So this is from a network leader. Women that we work with over and over again articulate a commitment to natural resources, growing nutritious food for community. That's all a strength, but it also plays into the decisions they make. In a situation where we are externalizing the environmental and social costs of our food system, these women are internalizing those and picking up the tab. That translates into women creating smaller businesses. They delay mechanization, hiring labor because they can't pay a living wage. Economically, it ends up being a disadvantage for them. So that's one take, very layered. And I also was gonna highlight the quote that Jenny pulled from the 2004 research study of counties in the US with a higher share of farms owned or operated by women have higher rates of non-farm entrepreneurship, longer life expectancies, and lower poverty rates. So, to get started, I would love for each of you to just share a little bit about your farming journey, how you got into farming, why you farm, what are your values, how your values shape your decisions for your farm. And in that process, if you want to play off of those 2 quotes that we shared, you can. Also, if you want to talk about, do you even identify as a woman farmer, and what does that mean to you, and are there other parts of your identity that are more important? So this is, I would love for each of you to respond in some way, and you can take it where you want. And I'm going to start with you.
Great. Yeah, those are, both very rich quotes and full of things to talk about. In terms of my history and how I got into farming, I didn't grow up on a farm. I grew up in a city. I thought that I was, gonna have some kind of white-collar career. And then I went to college, and I realized that I wanted to do something tangible and real in the world. And that's how I found farming. Basically, I found it through thinking about how I could be an activist or a force for social change. And I thought, hey, I'll be at the foundation of the way we feed ourselves as a community, of humans, as a civilization, maybe. And so that's what led me to farming. And so obviously it's those values of how do we feed ourselves, and how can we do that in ways that are in connection and collaboration with the earth. So that first quote with the kind of internalizing of of the environmental costs really resonated with me. I didn't come into farming knowing about the systems or the traditions of farming, so I came into it with kind of a fresh perspective and a naive perspective, which I think has been a strength ultimately, because it has enabled me to think about farming in ways that, had I grown up in farming, I would have kind of been more on a path. And this kind of expanded my set of ideas about what's possible or what should be possible. But yeah, my farm is smaller than it would be had I known about how to get loans and how to do all this other stuff. Instead, I built my farm with what money I had access to, and could raise. So yeah, I think that's a kind of interesting thing to think about of the kind of, my farm is called Humble Hands Harvest, so thinking of the kind of humility of people kind of forming what they can figure out how to farm. Yeah, I'll leave it there.
For me, my journey with farming, there was sort of a break in between. So started out in Nigeria, West Africa, with my parents, growing different crops. So that involves leasing land away from where we live to grow things like corn and beans. But at the same time, in our little suburban neighborhood, everyone had a garden behind their homes or, trees. And so we grew up with having our food really close to us because there was no department stores where you could go, and have that convenience of having food available. And so that's the notion that I grew up with. But as a young person, I just saw it as hard work, back-breaking work, and wanted nothing to do with it. And so just wanted to get an education and hopefully leave that lifestyle behind. Came into the United States, and there was the convenience of going to the grocery store, just buying food and not having to stress over growing your own food. But then I realized something, the food was different, it tastes different, bland, just was odd. And not until I met my husband, who grew up in a farm, and also with a generation of black farmers in the United States, that I really understood some of the disconnect with, where our food came from. And so when we decided to start our own farm, it was one of the motivations is making sure that we had control of where our food came from. So that's sort of our journey. It's more family and community focused for us. So that's kind of how, I guess, our identity in farming was built around that family and community aspect.
I grew up in a city, like a lot of people, I'm sure, in this room. I'm a first-generation farmer, too. But I really came to agriculture from an environmental activism standpoint, and eventually figured out the social justice aspect of it as well, but initially came to it thinking that agriculture is always pitted as this really terrible thing for the environment, but it doesn't have to be. But I studied internationally in this crazy college that I went to, and saw women farmers around the world, and started studying agriculture and women in agriculture at that point, and eventually realized I didn't want to just talk about farmers or talk to farmers. I wanted to be a farmer as well. I would say when I went to grad school, people really looked down on that idea. They were sort of like, hey, you made it this far, why are you going to go back to the farm? And it was a real struggle to say, no, this is a valid way to make a living. And for me, the gender aspect and the aspect of women has always been a really integral part of my identity on my farm. And I cannot pass the mic without saying that, if I look around in this room today, it's a lot of women. And there were a lot more men yesterday morning in the room, and I will be that person. And it may be that they've gone home, it may be that they'll show up later, but it's really telling that there are, 75% of the audience is female. And so if that's because there are more women farmers, then yes, that's awesome. If it's because men don't think that this conversation relates to them, then we still, it's really evident for why this panel is here today.
That's hard to follow. There's a pro and a con of being the last. But, I'll refocus on my farming journey. I came to farming because of health. I had a diagnosis in my family of cancer, and it became really clear that like what we ate was like directly related to our well-being. I was in my 20s, and so I signed on as a working share on a giant CSA outside of Chicago. I was living in Chicago, also first-generation farmer, raised in the city. And so I really started farming because it was a way that I could provide my family with organic vegetables. My parents, not my children now. And I got there, and the farmer put me on hoeing the 2-acre winter squash patch, as you do when a young 20-something shows up enthusiastic. And in that squash patch, it took a while, I knew that's what I wanted to do. You know, I knew that's what I wanted to do. And yeah, that was the beginning of my farming journey. So that was a CSA farm serving Chicago. And the community around that farm was, I never did anything other than a CSA farm. It was like, that was my introduction to farming. That was a biodynamic farm. It was an organic farm, and so it was just like, there was no other way. I can stop.
Perfect, thank you. You read my mind. That was wonderful. Thank you all so much, and you all get to see a glimpse already of the amazing people that these people are. So, okay, so you all have discussed some of your values and why you got into farming, and we also know that not just women hold these values as a reason to get into farming, so I just want to note that as well. But a lot of the research is pointing to this trend that when there are women-owned farms, that's one of the main values. So I want to honor the values there that you all and women bring to farming of environmental sustainability, soil health, a living wage, food security. But then also in the research that I was doing, finding statistics like women tend to run farms that are about half the size and make 151% less farm income than those run by men. And generally speaking, according to research, women of color, particularly Black women, are earning less income as compared to white women. And I also wanted to point to, in that first quote that I read too, the framing of that quote also seems to be in this framework of valuing profit, of like even the framing of the quote is valuing the profit over some of these other values that we're bringing to creating strong communities. So my question is, and I have a few, how do you define success in your farm business? And how do you balance making a living with values like environmental sustainability, community building, food security? And then also, I added this one in, y'all. How do we work to close the gender and racial inequity while also just running our farms?
Yeah, so on my farm, I co-farm with another woman. We have created a mission and vision statement that's what we go back to when we're making our decisions about our farm. And yeah, nothing in our mission and vision statement say anything about financial profit. It says stuff about celebrating our place-based community and the connections that we have there, and gathering together on the land and celebrating our connection to the land. And we added recently, because it was necessary, a bullet point in that mission statement about sustainability for ourselves and our bodies. So our values there are about actually being able to do this work for the long term and having it be joyful and worthwhile for us personally. And finances play a role in that. Like, we need to make money as a farm in order to keep going, in order to have some quality of life things that we need. And so we are always thinking about that, thinking about how to price our products, how to be profitable. But it's not our first thing. Like, if there's a way that we could be super profitable, but neither of us want to do it or would find joy in it, then we're not going to do that. So, yeah, that's, honestly, I think that more businesses, whether they're farms or not, should be thinking along those lines, along the lines of like, what makes our quality of work better, and does that need to translate into profit or some other kind of thing in our business? So yeah, that's what I have to say about that.
I just want to know, we had talked about not every panelist has to answer every single question, and also if you want to take it in a different direction, you're welcome to do that. I'm giving you permission in front of everyone. Can we use that one?
As for us, and I really agree with what Hannah said about we ourselves being sustainable. So you as the farmer has to be whole. Is your operation sustainable to survive? And I'm gonna just give an example with goat farmers. They say most times goat farmers in the United States don't last more than 5 years. And so it's just that, making sure that, you know, we are sustainable. So one of the things that we have done is, from, you know, the decisions of what breed to pick, you know, to raise, and how we want the operation to run, it just has that sustainability mindset. Because if the farm doesn't survive, you know, of what use is all this hard work that we've put into it. So that's kind of one of the biggest mindset we've put in early on. And in terms of profits, I mean, it's something that my husband and I struggle with year in and out as to why are we really doing this. And to be sustainable, you really have to be profitable, at best, break even. So that's, to be honest, a struggle for our farm, but we see the community work paying off, and that has really, I guess, been our motivation to keep pushing forward. But yes, women farmers tend to be more looking at the family or the community versus profits. And there's a lot of farms that I've seen, you know. I'm just gonna pick on someone in the audience here, like Lopez Farm here in Frankfurt, you know. Even teaching farmers how to process their own meat, it sounds really basic, but it's really important, considering that me being an immigrant farmer, the way meat is sold in the grocery stores, you know, retail packs and all that is different from what immigrants are used to. You know, we try to eat I wouldn't say almost the whole animal. And so being able to learn how to, something as simple as processing your own livestock, you know, goes a long way to helping with that sustainability.
I think that a lot of women tend to sell directly to their consumers. And I think that the values that a lot of small-scale farms bring to the table and to the farmers market and to their CSA members are part of why people buy from us. So the fact that it's not just so profit-driven is actually part of the profit ultimately, because I know, at least for our farms, since we're about to start our 23rd year, I mean, we've had people that have been with us the entire time, and they care as much about like being here right now as they do about the vegetables that we sell them. And so I think there can be like the other side to that story, which is that your community involvement and the passion that brings you to what you do is part of what you're selling.
That's totally true. I mean, I think the most important thing that we can do is build that resilience and build that support. And there's no like numeric data behind that. And so I think it's really important to recognize the value, and I think about that a lot with like the earth, like the work that we're doing to steward the land is really important. It's like trying to quantify what's happening when you're moving chicken tractors 3 times a day or something. And it's just mind-blowing if you try and break it down to like the profit. It is for me. I don't like the cost-benefit analysis is hard for me. So yeah, that community building and building the fertility and feeling stable is really important, and it's not answering your question.
No, yeah, it is, and I have like follow-up questions that sort of get into the next one anyway. I do want to remind everybody that we're maybe already halfway through, which is crazy, so please put your questions in Slido if you haven't already. Okay, so land and capital are like what's a really big, important thing for every farmer. And so can you share some of your experiences with us about accessing land and capital and what that showed you about the U.S. food and agriculture systems, or finding creative ways to navigate this? And also, I know that some of you have some stories about what you've just been talking about, of that like investment in your community actually like really feeds you. So like that becomes, yeah, I'll let you tell your own stories.
Yeah, I'll start and I'll tell my story in as nutshell-y as a way as I can. My story of accessing land is entirely based actually on my community's creativity and my like willingness to get in there and try to make something happen. So my land is 22 acres, and it had been a cornfield. And when it went up for sale, the neighbor up the road from that land was worried about who would buy it and what would happen to that land. He was worried specifically about a hog confinement coming. And so what he did was organize a group of about 20 people, and they formed an LLC, and they bought the land collectively, just to get it off the market and protect it. And then I was able to come in as a beginning farmer at that point. I was leasing land and say, hey, like this could be a diversified farm. And I want to be part of creating this diversified farm. And ultimately, I was able to buy people out kind of one by one from this collective land purchase. And now my farm owns the land. So that's a really cool model. And it feels really, it's unique in that an entire community came together to make something happen on their landscape. And I want to see that more often. It's really so much of the food system is the work of capitalizing the food system is actually put on the shoulders of farmers when it should be borne by the entire community, in my opinion. And so I'm really grateful for my community for doing a little bit of that, and want to see more of it happen.
Yeah, I've done some interesting things with land access based on community building. I think the driver was like a lack of trust in the traditional banking system, and kind of interesting to me to explore other options. So yeah, we've exclusively purchased our land through loans from community members. It's been really satisfying to do that with people because it deepens your relationship even more when you borrow money from them and you pay them back with farming. It's been really great, yeah. And we've also done a couple crowdfunding campaigns just for like projects on the farm. So I think that like developing community and building a farm around community and using that trust that's been built to have alternative funding has been just a project for me that has worked, yeah.
this is kind of a crazy story, but we had a CSA member who we'd worked with on some like social justice issues over the years approach us and say, okay, I don't have any kids and I'm leaving my estate to the Nature Conservancy, but I'd like to see some land preserved in my lifetime, and I'd like to buy it and give it to you to preserve. And we were like, huh? But that's actually exactly what happened. So we are having conversations kind of like the one you guys have already had now, like, okay, so it's adjacent to our land, and to get to it, you have to go through our farm, and, you know, what does that look like for the future? But, you know, that was, like, I've never heard of anything like that, but there are probably more opportunities for something like that if we feel bold enough to start those conversations.
And I think it speaks to the deep trust that you have built with your community over time. Did you have anything, or do you want me to go on? Okay, you can loop. Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna switch around because I know that there's a number of you who want to speak to this, and it's around childcare and elder care, and I have to say that I almost didn't even want to ask a question about childcare and elder care, because if this were a panel of men, then this would not be brought up. And so I also want to say that the next time any of you are facilitating a panel with men, farmers, ask about childcare and elder care, because it is a big part of their lives too. And I also understand from my own 3 children that it is a big part of being a farmer. So research continues to show that even in 2025 and 2026, that the responsibilities for childcare and elder care continue to fall mostly on women. So what have been your experiences with childcare and elder care as you navigate life as a farmer?
Coming from a community where I guess it's collective community responsibility, I guess, to help raise the child, where you have uncles, aunts helping out wherever we can, and to a different community where it's just the responsibility, I guess, of the immediate family, and not enough or care or access, I guess, to child care. It's really, as a farming a family, it's really tough to find childcare. However, we found ways to adapt on our farm. So even if it means putting my baby on the back or carrying her with me to walk around the farm, or putting her in a stall to have her play with the sand or whatever, keep her busy while I do other things. So it's really, I would say, one of the things that we've learned to navigate and adapt. Again, the older they get, the better, because you have additional helping hands on the farm. So it's a real struggle, especially if you don't have close family members, around to help. So definitely for the younger children, a little bit of a challenge for farming families.
Yeah, so maybe it's already come through, but definitely gender roles play a big part in my thinking and identity. And we were 35 when we had our daughter, and we only have one, because I really do not think I could have continued on the farm in the same way with more than one, and it already dramatically altered just because you're physically like growing a child, then you're like physically feeding a child, and there are just biological realities to that are there. So I think that like before we had a kid, we did everything together all the time. Like that's it. And then obviously that had to change somewhat. And it was like super soul crushing for a little bit for like my identity, because I was like struggling with wanting to feel like the joy and motherhood and parenthood, and also like, wait, you know, what's going on? And finally like coming to peace with that and inserting, like writing the CSA newsletter literally on my phone on MailChimp, like while nursing my kid. And just finding ways to like get creative. I would also just say that when COVID happened, our kid, she wasn't young, but she was like, what, 6 or 7 or something. And I'd say it totally brought me to my knees, because there was no childcare. Like we couldn't risk exposing our like my elder mom to caring for her. And she ran wild. I mean, because we also had like our busiest year ever with like all this demand, and she was just like totally on her own. And she was like trapping turtles and like putting them in bird cages and just doing like crazy stuff. But it also like ended up being this moment where she really came into her own, and she came into the farm in a way that I don't think maybe would have happened if she hadn't been left truly to her own devices. And yeah, I also did care for my mom on hospice at my farm. She came literally the weekend after our last, you're gonna make me cry now. She came the weekend after our last CSA delivery. Ooh, sorry. And she died the week before our first CSA delivery. And I know that may sound kind of crazy, but I don't know, part of me thinks there was some agency with her in that, but I couldn't have done it if my whole family hadn't been willing to help me and let me do it. But I was supposed to be here last year, but I was caring for my mom, so.
You're hard to follow. I have 3 just feral kids. I mean, they're anyone that, so I did the rogue thing of homeschooling and farming, and every gray hair and wrinkle is because I did the rogue thing of homeschooling and farming. They're 26, 22, and 14, and it was an amazing journey. It was very difficult. Maybe I'll do an art project of like every carrier, like from the original ergo carriers down to the sling phase. And anyway, I had them on my back all the time, and on my front, on my back, on my side. And I feel I can remember nursing one of them, and we had long-term apprentices at the time, and there was like a young 20-something out there hoeing, and I was like, oh, like, I'm good at that, you know? And but I didn't have to choose my career over my family. I got to do both. And so that was a beautiful thing. But there were many times where I was jealous of my partner at that time, you know, and perhaps angry and thinking a lot. But it was an incredible journey to do with the family. And yeah, Jenny gave us the sign.
I just have to clarify. So that's 10 minutes until audience questions, correct? Great. So I know I'm just the moderator, but I have to share that I had visions of babies on my back. We have 3, and children tend to have a mind of their own, and it was clear from the beginning that my first child, that was not going to happen. And so you have expectations of what you think it's going to be like, and then it shifts. And so you have to be able to adapt with the reality that you're living in that moment. I also want to note that there is a Farming with Families panel, which I think will be a robust discussion, so we can revisit this conversation during that panel. Okay, I have more questions. Where am I going? Okay, so USDA data suggests that women, and particularly women of color, remain underrepresented as beneficiaries of USDA's most critical relief programs and financial resources. Recent changes to USDA regulations removed race and gender-based criteria for some relief and grant programs, saying that, quote, discrimination has been sufficiently addressed. So what have been your experiences navigating the USDA, organic certification, and other farm supports, and what are your thoughts about the removal of the socially disadvantaged in the new USDA regulations?
Where do I start from? I don't want to talk forever, but I think the sentence got me was disparities have been, is it addressed? I just want to get the right sentence.
Yeah, this is a quote from someone, from the USDA, essentially saying discrimination has been sufficiently addressed.
Okay. I'm on the Ag Advisory Committee of my county, and there's a lot of work that still needs to be done, especially on the grassroots and community level. And it's not until recent years that I've seen a lot of cool programs come up that are really trying to address some of these issues. And I'm gonna just name a few of them. I'm sure there's a lot more to name that had a really good impact on the community. LFPA program, was one of the ones. Oak, I think, had some cuts that were affected. And it's a lot of really good grassroots work. And there's still something missing when it comes to information. Thank God for Facebook now that a lot of people are able to find out about different grants and programs that the USDA now provides. But there's still a lot of work in the information side where a lot of people are not aware of programs, especially people of color, that are out there and support available for their farms. So I think that unless that work is done, I don't think the disparities have been adequately addressed yet.
Yeah, I mean, we have had one president of color, and we've not had a single female president in our nation's history. So, until we break that top barrier, I don't think we can even come close to pretending like disparities are addressed, because I didn't think that I'd be 48 and still be saying something like this. And I'm kind of afraid like how old I'm actually going to be before we're addressing these core issues. And I'd also just say, you might look in this room and think, oh, there's so many women farmers, it's addressed. I think a lot of people have farmed in spite of programs that are out there because we didn't get access to them. And it was only when we realized, oh, there might be actual recognition of our place in this program, that people did start applying for them and did start getting them. And final thing I'll say is, how many people have a farm library of books that they've pulled on in their farming career in this room? Okay, are the majority of them by women? No, they're not. And so, are the majority of them farmers of color? No, they're not. So until we start getting at some of these deeper issues, enough said, right?
Great, thank you so much. So another reminder to get Slido whenever that QR code comes back up. And even if you don't have a question to add to it, you can look at the questions and up or down vote them based on what you want answered. And then if anybody just doesn't want to do that and you just really want to add a question to Slido, either find somebody at your table who can help you or raise your hand and somebody in the room can come help you add that question. So final question before we go into audience questions. And so women farmers in the US tend to be smaller scale, sustainable organic farms. But globally, over half of the world's farmers are women and are responsible for roughly half of the world's food production. In contrast, only 12% of commodity farmers in the US are women. So a sort of joint question is, what are your experiences with women farmers globally or in farming sectors outside of sustainable agriculture? And then also, how do we build more of those bridges? And like with that, there's also been research that shows that actually there's a higher percentage of beginning farmers who are women. And so what do you think is the cause of that?
Okay, fine. Yeah, I mean, I think that obviously I shared like women's roles internationally were a big part of why I wanted to be a farmer, and it felt like solidarity with farmers around the world, women around the world. And, you know, I actually still participate in these like farmer to farmer exchanges. And gender is always like inevitably a huge issue. And maybe one of like my favorite experiences was somewhere having someone explain what gender was to a room, mixed room, saying, okay, you know, gender is how like men are out in the fields and women are inside taking care of the kids. And you're like, no, that is not what we're talking about. And I think that like the power that we have is connecting really globally, not just within our local communities, but globally. Like this is a true force. And what we feel and what we represent or are communicating is, I think, felt by farmers and women farmers everywhere. And it, like, if we tap into that power, that becomes something of like an international force, which is why it is the International Year of the Woman Farmer.
Growing up, I saw a lot of women take on roles not only in the home, but also on the farm. My grandmother actually died on her way back from a farm. So that's, I guess, not too far off of the fact that women have, I guess, always taken not only, they've taken on a lot, mental load of the home and things like that. So I think in the international, with the International Year of the Woman Farmer, women need more support beyond, they need, I guess, more support in terms of getting help with carrying a lot of the mental load in the home and supporting the kids. I mean, I grew up seeing women farming just to pay their kids' school fees and stuff like that. So women, I think for a long time, especially internationally, have taken a role on doing whatever it takes to take care of the home and the community. And I'm not sure about the bridging that gap. And I'm happy to see a lot of beginning farmers being women. I think women are beginning to wake up and see that we need to take care of our families and take control of where the food system and where our food is coming from. So with terms of bridging the gap, I'm not sure where that will come from. I'm just gonna take an example with the recent, I think it's the FBA program, the Farmer Bridge Assistance, where I think almost 11 billion went to commodities and cash crop, and just $1 billion went to specialty crop farms, which I would assume is where a lot of the women are. And so, I don't know, just things like that really needs to be looked at.
Thank you. So I'm going to move to audience questions, but if you all have other things to say, and even if, I know sometimes my mind, I'll be like, oh, actually I wanted to say something about that first question, so feel free to also bring in threads that you want to be sure to bring in. But so the question on the top here is, what are some boundaries you've set to manage a good work-life balance? Great question.
Yeah, great question. On our farm, so a important story about our farm is that my co-farmer has been managing a lot of health challenges over the past number of years, and so she has actually been the leader in setting boundaries because she's had to. She just hasn't had the energy, and so that had she not had those health challenges, I'm not sure we would be as boundaried as a farm as we are. But we have made a commitment to not work more than 40 hours a week, and actually in recent years we've made ourselves schedules that are more like 32 hours a week, and we've tried to hold to that. Obviously it's a farm, so we can't always hold to that, but we've made an effort in that regard. Another aspect that we do, which isn't necessarily a boundary, but it's worth talking about, is that we have kind of made a policy on our farm that we share lunch every day that we're working with whoever's working on the farm. And so when we've had like four crew members working over the summer, for example, we rotate week by week who's making lunch that week. And it's a really nice opportunity to care and be cared for. So I really value that kind of policy that we've made on our farm too. Yeah.
Okay, if anything else comes up on that, you can answer it. So this question is, what helps you to capture more value? Processing, branding, storage, or market access? There's two other mics there.
I think market access for sure, and just selling directly to consumers, because, the price difference is just so insane. And when selling to like restaurants, because we do some of that, selling at a pretty much retail price, like slight discount, but it's not a wholesale product. So I think that's been key for us.
These just shifted. I think there was another one I was going to ask that went away. So how did you develop your more traditionally male physical or equipment-based skills? No one taught me this stuff.
I've kind of approached that stuff of like, we need to, figure out how to fix a tractor problem or something like that. I've generally approached it with a lot of humility, and it's like, well, if I don't know how to do this, then I need to find someone who does know, which is sometimes Landon, this guy who I know. So yeah, there's some humility there, but there's also the feeling that I have internally of like, I might not know how to do this, but I see people doing it, and I know that I'm as capable as they are. Just like, even not a physical or equipment-based thing, but like I do my farm's financial records. I wasn't trained in finances, but like I know people can do it. I believe that I can do it, and so I'm gonna figure it out. Yeah, but one thing also that I have thought about in regards to like male bodies versus female bodies or my body is starting those dang pull chain things. It's the worst. It's like terrible. Yeah, that's like some of the worst experiences I've had as a farmer is like trying to get a thing started. Thank goodness for those electric key starts. Yeah.
I would say I concur with those pull things. Yeah, for me, I guess I'm lucky to have my husband who, does some work with equipment. Sometimes I wish that I could learn to do it that way. I don't have to wait forever for him to get it done. But again, it's that notion of, do I have to learn everything? Do I need to, do everything at this point in time? Maybe not, but definitely would love to learn some of those things when I have more time.
Oh, I just have to add this funny thing because I'm divorced now, and there's a lot of trauma in that, but the biggest trauma was like the chainsaw. Like I was like, I can live without the husband, but to live without someone that I'm not, just the whole thing. Just you can go with some
Love
probably
it.
more important.
I'm going to ask this question, and it relates, so you can answer it however you want. But so, I also just have to say, it feels like there's a business opportunity here for somebody to like design tools for women. What is it? Without pink handles. So women farmer hacks, do you have some tips for fellow women farmers when they feel things get too heavy or too hard mentally and physically? And I feel like that goes to the tools too.
Gosh, I cannot remember, but this is what happens when you get to be 48. You're like, what was I gonna say? I had this really good thought. I wanted to say something back about the equipment though, which is that like on the farm internship that my partner and I did, like he would get sent out to the fields on the tractor and I would go in the packing shed. And it was like not until we started our own farm that I was like, okay, Mike, you gotta, he really helped me on that farm too, as did one of the farmers. But I really had to get some like tractor lessons from him. And, it's kind of like humbling and whatever, but it was also just like, this is just the way it is. Like, I didn't get the same access. And so that's been helpful. And, just like Fatima said, like coming to terms with like the fact that if Mike weren't there, I probably would just pay someone to do the tractor oil change because it's not how I want to spend my time. Whereas he loves to do that, and like more power to him, but it's not my thing. And I don't think it makes me like less of a farmer. And so that's not really answering that question, but yeah.
Okay. What resources did you utilize to educate yourself on farming outside of higher education, if it's not something that you grew up with?
Yeah, I don't think there's a substitute for working on a farm. So that's what I did. I worked on farms for 3 or 4 seasons before I started my own farm business on rented land, and then continually, definitely trial by error, but definitely just getting mentorship and experience from working on farms and from talking with other farmers.
Well, there's one book that I love. that is not new, but I think is super great, called Sustainable Vegetable Production from Startup to Market. And that's vegetables, so sorry for everybody doing other things, but Sustainable Vegetable Production from Startup to Market, Vern Grubinger.
So what is it that you actually need to feel supported by the larger farming community? I'll say the full question here is, industry looks at women in ag as an opportunity to sell tools with pink handles. What is it that you actually need to feel supported by the larger farming community?
Yeah, I feel like what I need is to be looked at as a peer and as a legitimate farmer. And I think the larger farming community also includes like conventional corn and bean guys. And it's pretty hard to be looked at as a real farmer if you're growing vegetables in that context. And so, so that's a whole other thing, not even related to being a woman necessarily. But I feel lucky to be sometimes in spaces where that like legitimacy is shared and understood. So yeah, I'm grateful when that happens.
I think the opportunity for different voices to participate in decision making, especially at the local level. So I would say the more voices we have at the table, you know, in committees, I think that would help. And especially a lot more women, people of color, people with different needs that are farming, you know, to be at those tables, helping guide decision making.
It's interesting what you said, because it's a dual thing. I do think as like a organic vegetable farmer, it's just, we're a marginalized community, except for in this room right now, you know. And so I can remember a long time ago, I mean, our neighbors are all just sort of, you know, they're farming cattle, or back in the day they were farming tobacco. And so I can remember, this is a long time ago now, we started growing organic tobacco for, you know, you had to contract it. We can talk about tobacco at a later time. But that was the first time our neighbors came down. They're like, ooh, okay, now you're really farming. And then like, oh, compost really works because you can have big tobacco with it. Like, it was just like, they sort of, I just thought of that story when you said that, Hannah, just like, we're women growing lettuce, I mean, the whole thing.
All right, so I have one final question to close us out, and that is, how, in this current time, are you finding and connecting to radical joy in your life?
I can take that right away. I am totally trying to get away from like bigger, like, I don't know, policy type stuff or like national organizing stuff. And I am working on the water quality on the creek in front of my house and requesting like Freedom of Information Act information from my State Department of Agriculture about chicken manure applications in my watershed, and just like the connection with other people in my community who care about that creek, who live there, who've been there for generations, many of whom have been there since the Trail of Tears and Cherokee removal to eastern Oklahoma. And it's just so uplifting to have this thing that might be kind of negative, like water quality and wanting to protect it, but just so empowering to work with like your community and finding out like there are people in every community that you don't even know are there, and it's easy to like stereotype rural America, but it's diverse and it's proud, and just that brings me a lot of joy, just like community. I guess we're back to community again.
For me, it's the joy I find these days is working with my kids. They're currently in 4-H and also helping our local community, teaching these young kids about agriculture. It's just empowering to see how these kids are eager to learn and grow. And so they are our future, so I'm honored to be a part of that.
Yeah, so I just took my winter vacation, so I connected to Radical Joy by being on the West Coast and seeing the coolest plants and flowers. Just like, life is so amazing. And I also got to see elephant seals who are so fat and like awkward and chalunking around on the beach, and that was really fun. So yeah, just like the beauty and wildness of life.
My new thing is hosting community dances on the farm. And I love it. And I don't know anything about it. Like, I don't know about the music or the dancing, but like when it happens in my space, I'm like, heck yeah.
Thank you all so much for sharing your experiences and wisdom. And thank you to the audience for great questions.
And
being
thank
here.
you to Ray for the moderating. It's always a privilege to see people who are willing to get up on the keynote stage in an opening session. I appreciate all 5 of you. I appreciate all the thoughtful contributions. I'll ask Erica Chambers to take a picture of the panel before they leave the stage. And you have a break until 10:30. Enjoy your sessions. Thank you very much.